Hi, everybody. Here we are. Welcome to our new episode for our live stream. And this episode is called The Importance of Participation. So that's what we're going to be talking about in a new way. Okay. So when we think about participation, as we kind of said, having your life work doesn't live in being an onlooker or a sayer or a believer. It lies in the participation or being of the idea, in the thinking that acknowledges the infinity of God in all ways. So, for instance, your individual conscious experience of doing what's called walking, talking, digesting your food, loving your friend and neighbor, having fun. In fact, all function is the God idea, principle performing. The only God you have exists in your acknowledgement of God. No one can walk for you, talk for you, digest your food for you. Then if no one can do that, then why accept the inconsistent theory that someone can think for you and thus be God for you? The only God you have is the God you are as awareness or as acknowledgement. So, anything you want to add to that, Betty?
Yeah, the thing that you do a lot, in fact, that I realize is an access to participating in life. It's called curiosity.
Yeah.
You know, when something comes up, when a new something comes across the horizon, when something interrupts your usual routine, it's your curiosity that has you participate in checking it out.
Yeah.
And that curiosity is not personal. It's like something within you that says, hey, this is fun. Look at this.
Right.
What can I find out about this? Where would this take me? What's new?
Right.
It's just one more ingredient in living yourself fully engaged.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I also wanted to start this one with a fun poem. So this poem is called Pop, and it's about creation, really, or invocation, or however you want to put it. But it was written by Jennifer Nelson, and here it is. Make your own bubble. Let it burst and enjoy the pop. Form your sphere again and roll around in it. Take up its whole shape. Revel in its boundaries. Then break out. Don't look back. Embrace this new space. Do not mourn the past. Celebrate the now of it. Spring forth and do anew. Make your own bubble again and pop. And I think that talks about and embodies participation, embodies what you just called out as curiosity, and that. So I just wanted to also set the stage with that. And of course, all of what we're pulling from in this episode and in the last episode, which if you haven't watched yet, go watch it, about our revelation while playing Skip-Bo while Mom was visiting. And then, it's all what is the idea? And that's this booklet by Margaret Laird. It's actually an address that she gave, and it's quite good. That's what we're using as material from Margaret Laird as we look at this idea and what is the idea. So all of these sessions coming now through up until the middle of October, right before the class that Betty will be leading in La Jolla, which is full, but really excited for that. But right up until then, all of these are going to be exploring what is the idea and how does that impact and show up in our life, and what are those things. So there's that. So anything else you want to add to any of that?
Yeah, everything springs forth from an idea. Without the idea, there's nothing.
Right.
So whatever you're involved in, if you really want to get to the nub, you want to get to, hey, what was the idea that had this occur?
Right.
Just like, what's the idea that had Betty occur? Something divine. Well, it's something divine with everything. And if you're in touch with that, you're off and running on a really exciting adventure of living.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. For sure. And it never stops. So it's very fun.
Hopefully.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So let's dive in. On page 3 of What is the Idea, Margaret Laird wrote, if the idea of the good is not lived in the understanding, one's conscious experience of God is suffering, want, and woe in the human sense of things.
Yeah, do you know people who say, well, it's God's will?
Almost like resignation to what's happening.
Yes, God's will, And the thing is, it's from your lips to God's ears. You are the God that you're talking about in your own being, in the divinity that's shaping everything about you. And if you don't engage or participate with the whole thing called your daily living, somebody else is stepping into that role and you're just going along like a little puppet.
Yeah.
If you really want to live yourself with joy, you've got to take part in that. Nobody's going to be able to give it to you.
Right.
Not inject it,
Right.
Yeah.
I'm reminded in your saying of that, oops, dropped my paper. I'm reminded in your saying of that, of the thing about, when you go and you go and you open the refrigerator and you get upset by all the stuff that's not there. That's what that reminds me of. It's like, well, God's will, oh, dang it. Why isn't there cream? I need some coffee. I want cream in my coffee. You know what I mean? And you're looking in there for what's not there. And then using that as your reason or rationale for, whatever else is going on. So and that's what came up for me when you said that. Because if the idea of good is not lived in the understanding, one's conscious experience of good, of God, is suffering, want, and woe in the human sense of things. And
I have to laugh because this is unrelated actually, but Margaret Laird makes a statement about a lot of people's perception of science. And she said, a lot of people go around looking for the absence of sickness. Darn it, it's not there.
Right.
And if it is, God's will.
Right. So what is it then? I'm going to ask you then, what is it about, let's start to distinguish participation. And I know you started with the curiosity comment and stuff like that, but what are we talking about when we talk about participation? Frame that up.
Well, participation is when you allow yourself to become engaged with whatever's going on. I can sit back and observe. That's not participation. Participation is when I am involved, engaged, so putting some idea in my own perception of what's going on, about what is this saying to me?
Mm-hmm.
If it's something I don't like, then I can participate by saying, not doing that today. I got things to do, and off you go. But if you're going to stay there, participate.
Right.
Otherwise, you're just like a fly on the wall. It means nothing. And you want to live yourself fully. You want to live yourself involved and engaged and enjoying and sharing, because you're talking about yourself, right, and your life and your liberty and your freedom and your well-being. There's no way to substitute your own involvement for anything. That's the whole name of the game.
Yeah. So you point to curiosity as being an access to participation. The next question, pardon me?
Willingness.
Then the other thing is does it just look like be a yes?
Yes. I know, because I have to correct it all the time. I have an automatic, nope, not doing that. And then you say, are you sure? And then you think, well, yeah, I think I could do that.
Right.
You know, I don't know where I got the automatic no, but I've changed it a lot.
Right.
Because I found out it's not any fun to say no.
Right. Well, we had a really interesting experience this weekend at the cabin. We went up to the cabin, and I was like, "Oh, it's going to be so great! We're going to float around on the pontoon. It's going to be fabulous." And we have this fabulous light now, so if we go at darkness, we can like actually see our dock, and it literally lights up the night sky. And then it rained. It rained and it stormed the entire weekend. So as we're driving up, we're kind of looking at, okay, it's going to rain and storm. And normally it would be like, well, maybe we don't go, blah, blah, blah. We just looked, and up in Wisconsin, which is where the cabin is, up in northern Wisconsin, there is a concert venue that we love to go to. We looked at their schedule, and they had a pretty fun thing. We didn't know who they were, never listened to their music before, but we thought, what the heck, let's buy tickets. So we went, and we had a whole rainy day experience up in Bayfield, Wisconsin, and it was amazing. And we had so much fun. And then we went to the concert, and we just had a blast. By the time we got home about midnight, back to the cabin, we were like, God, what a great day that was. And it didn't matter if it was sunny or raining, and it rained, and we got soaked and all that. But boy, did we have a good time.
Yeah, your joy and your good time is not hinged on the weather. It's not hinged on where you are.
Yeah.
It's hinged on who you're being. Yeah. Are you engaged? Are you curious? Are you willing?
Right.
And then you can have a blast.
Right.
It doesn't make any difference what's going on.
Right.
Your joy is up to you.
Yeah. So it was really, really fun.
That's great.
So moving into science and health, and when we look at this idea that Margaret Laird just wrote and we share, and on page 70 in Science and Health, starting on line 2, Mary Baker Eddy wrote, "The testimony of the corporeal senses cannot inform us what is real and what is delusive, but the revelations of science unlock the treasures of truth."
Yep.
So say a little bit more about that.
That thing called testimony of the corporeal senses, that means the way everything looks. You know, what I'm observing, what I'm looking at, what I'm talking about, not what I'm being.
Yeah.
So all that stuff doesn't tell me much. But what speaks to me, you see, it's what opens up when I say, yeah, let's get into it. Let's go for it. Let's have fun.
Yeah. Very cool. All right. And then in your book, Mind is the Athlete, on page 26, you wrote, "A recognition of the nature of reality allows me to loosen any attachment to my current observable world."
Exactly.
So if I can let go of any attachment to my current observable world, I am free in that moment, that I don't have a judgment, preconception, something that it should look different. But if I open up to what's really so and the perfection functioning, I can now let go and see what's there to see and explore what's there to explore.
Yep.
Okay.
And that little moment when I loosen my attachment to
Yes.
the way I like it to look, that little moment is when I have to be willing.
Right.
And when I'm willing, who knows what's going to open up, but it'll be fun.
Right.
And it'll be new. It won't be a rerun of the old stuff.
Right. Yeah. And there is a quote.
New. We get hung up thinking there's a past because we live it like we're dragging it with us all the time. It's baggage.
Right. Right.
But in that moment when you let go of the attachment, just in that click, 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 right there, if you're willing, none of that baggage goes with you. You go into a whole new, unexplored territory.
Right. And verbal declarations about God are not the state of being God.
That's right. Talk is just talk.
Right. And it just lives in the same language world as anything else.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think that's a good one to think about. You know, it's like it doesn't get you anywhere without the being of it.
And you know, there's always, we get into a rut kind of. We think we've got our day all mapped out. and something comes along. And if you're really living yourself intuitively and willing to look,
Yeah.
there's always that moment when you can say, what about that? I didn't know about that.
Right.
Take a look at that. Oh my. A whole new what opens up.
Right.
So get so that you really play with yourself with that.
Right.
You don't ever have to have one moment look like the last moment.
And it doesn't anyways, even if we think there's some similarity.
I know.
So,
but we think, and what we believe is what we go with.
That's right. That's right. All right, let's move on to the next set of quotes. And what is the idea on page 4? Margaret Laird wrote, intuitions of reality are what you see, hear, feel, and call by all sorts of names. However, idea, the sensing, the soul is the thing.
Yeah.
And I love that because it isn't what you're looking at. That's the thing. It's not what people are saying. That's the thing. It's like, who are they being speaks louder than the words they're saying. And if you pay attention to the idea, you can get it before, beyond any of the material sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And just to get a feel for this, what is the idea? It isn't like an intellectual inquiry into the meaning of that word idea. It's like something gets suggested and there's a sensing that you have about it. And it's your sensing that awakens you to, oh, what else can I see here? What else might I discover if I go this way?
Right.
What's new here?
Yeah. Now, if we look at science and health, and there was no page number for this in the notes. So if we look at science and health, somewhere in science and health, I promise this sentence exists. At any rate, it's Mary Baker Eddy wrote, the divine mind maintains all identities from a blade of grass to a star as distinct and eternal.
Yeah, and I'll tell you why I included that. Because when we're stopping, in fact, anything that we're doing that's active involvement is mind present acting. It's not personal. The thing that interrupts my personal sense of Betty is when I forget that because I've got some idea that I want to check out.
Yeah.
That inquiry is mind action. That's the divinity shaping my end. And when I pay attention to it, no wonder I have joy and freedom. That's what we're talking about. So I don't have to hunt for when is God going to take care of me here? It's when am I going to shut up and let him?
Right. Well, let God.
And it's like the divine being that you are.
Yes.
Participate.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Runs
Very
the
cool.
show.
Yes. And to that end, there's also, let's see, just a minute.
I already covered the note under that, so just go on to the all
Right. But it's, I live science right here where I am. My human experience reflects or expresses my seeing.
Yeah.
So then it's, so watch your pay attention to your seeing.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yep.
And all right. So then the Albee quote from Mind is the Athlete on page 26, you wrote, an acknowledgement of fundamental facts calls them into being in appropriate human language.
Yep.
So an acknowledgement of fundamental facts calls them into being in appropriate language. So here's the thing. We think what we're looking at is somehow sourcing right there, but it's really a reflection of who we're being.
That's right.
So anytime we're looking at our world and our circumstances and all of that, it's a past phenomena.
Say that again.
So anytime we're looking at our reality, this chair, whatever, the things that we're saying, it's a past phenomena. It's already been.
Yeah, there's a difference between looking at and seeing.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. But what you're saying, I'm just trying to make sure it's clear. An acknowledgement of fundamental facts calls them into being in appropriate human language.
Yeah, and I'm glad you read it again because, over and over and over in studying science, you find that understanding really comes about as a result of your acknowledgement of what's so for you. Because the acknowledgement is intelligence functioning, even if it's coming from Betty, because Betty isn't originating that.
Right.
So an acknowledgement of fundamental facts is really your own divine being acknowledging the presence of perfection. And let's see what that looks like right here, right now, doing this. Oh my.
Right.
Yep.
Yep. All right. And this really does put problems into their true perspective. Right? It allows you really to resolve them.
Yep.
I mean, if you take that seriously, an acknowledgement of fundamental facts calls them into being in appropriate human language, problem solved.
That's
whatever
right.
you're confronting.
Yep.
Well, who are you being? Aha. Acknowledgement of fundamental facts calls them into being in appropriate human language. The world, and I know we've said this in prior episodes, not even that long ago, but your world looks exactly as it should.
Yep.
And as it must.
It
For what
can't
there
really
is.
play.
That's right. For what there is for you to discover. So an acknowledgement of fundamental facts rather than getting caught up in your opinion, perception, judgment, point of view, and all of that allows you to have it freely show up and the next show up and the next show up without putting a stop in the middle of it with your judgment and opinion and all of that just freezes it in place, if you will.
Yeah. And the other thing too, if you remember back over all these sessions we've had talking about, we are the architect of our own life. Not Betty, but the being that has Betty show up is the authority in that life.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm not involved, guess what? Nothing's happening.
Right.
And it's all God's will,
Right. So, yeah, and I remember what I heard so much, growing up and even now, health is a function of participation.
Yep.
So all good stuff to play with here. All right. On What is the Idea on page 4, Margaret Laird wrote, the God idea are the occurrences and events, all that is seen, heard, and felt.
See, that's what the idea is. The occurrences and events, all that is seen, heard, and felt. The occurrences of events are different for each one. Because my seen, heard, and felt is not your seen, heard, and felt.
Yeah.
But all those events and occurrences are divine being the way I have to have it right now. So let's participate, move on.
Right.
If I refuse to participate, I'm going to be stuck there for a while.
Yeah.
And that's no fun.
Well, unless it is. All right.
I don't want to be stuck.
Right. Science and Health on page 301, starting on line 12. Mary Baker Eddy wrote, he, man, reflects the divine, which constitutes the only real and eternal entity.
Yep.
So real doesn't show up in the circumstances. Reality present is what sources the whole look, everything that you can see, hear, feel, taste, touch.
Yep. When you think about it, we've all heard all our life that, or at least the scientists have that I'm worked with, that man is the expression of God's being.
Yes.
So if you reflect God's being, that can't be the Betty thing.
Right.
So that's who I am. So I forget that when I look in the mirror and see Betty and I think, you better fix your hair. Looks terrible. Right. Something like that, I'm really not even seeing myself.
Right.
So
This is when we say, pay attention to your seeing, and go on to say, with science, for your vision, the seeming appearance called a human view reveals itself as being all, whole, perfect, joyous, and free in place of unsatisfying and wrong.
Yep.
And then more is, this reflection seems to mortal sense transcendental because the spiritual man substantially transcends mortal vision. That's one reason we don't allow appearances to tell us what's real.
Want to read it again?
From where?
The note, this reflection.
Yeah, this reflection seems to mortal sense transcendental because the spiritual man substantially transcends mortal vision. That's one reason we don't allow appearances to tell us what's real.
Yep. And watch yourself, because you do, if you're being a two-legged animal, you do let the appearances tell you what's going on. And then the tears come, and the unhappiness comes, and the oh dear comes, and the anxiety comes, and oh dear, now what? Do you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if you're not allowing that to tell you what's going on, you're not going to be stuck with, oh dear, what now?
Right.
You're not going to be stuck with, oh, it's never going to work out. I'm in deep trouble.
Right. Well, I kind of look at it like when I do get caught like that, like triggered like that, and I get sucked in, I always know that I can return when I can return, I can acknowledge divinity. I can source that myself back to being, or, as being, and let this alone.
Yep.
And I can do that.
Well, being willing.
That's right, because you got to be willing. Yeah, but I can get there. It's not that I don't have the tears or I don't have the reaction necessarily, and I don't worry whether I do or not. I just get with the facts.
Right, and that's the value of having this science to work with. I don't care what comes up. You have everything at your fingertips to deal with it.
Right.
And it begins with acknowledgement.
Yeah.
And it begins with willingness, and it begins with joy. And if you're not stuck with those, you haven't begun.
Right.
Remember that old movie about the hotel? What was it? If it's not fine, it's not the end.
Right. Right. Exactly. So, seen, heard, and felt. I think we've done all these, haven't we? This is divine. And
no.
Yeah, we did. Didn't we do these? Okay, we'll do them again.
The very last one. Did you do that?
The very last one, where the God idea are the occurrences and events. Yes, we did that one. And that one. Mine is the athlete. The God idea, the idea that governs. This is what you wrote. Is integral to life and supportive of us and our growth, as our needs and desires are defined as challenges unrecognized as demands for growth until now.
That's right.
So however it looks is a demand for growth.
Yeah, it's a demand to be yourself.
Yeah.
I think of that thing that the practitioner told Margaret way back in the early days of her practice, when she was having a problem and it didn't seem to yield to help that she was getting.
Right.
And the practitioner looked at her and said, God loves you too much to leave you in this belief of yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, very good. Very good. And I do want to say that our live streams are sponsored by the Institute of Metaphysical Science. We were established in 1959 as the Margaret Laird Foundation, researching, exploring, living, and teaching the science of being and the causal nature of consciousness. You can visit the site at scientificmetaphysics.org. So if you enjoyed this session, donations are gladly accepted to support our efforts here. And
there are a few expenses involved.
That's right. And until next week, when we continue this session, this series on what is the idea. So we'll be continuing to explore what is the idea. This is actually not available right now. So you can't even get this if you go to the site. not there. But we're working on getting a PDF version available. So you'll just have to bear with us on this one. But at any rate, any kind of comments, questions, anything, always very, very welcome. So feel free to put those in the comment box. And we will be live again next week, next Tuesday, with a whole new subject along the same what is the idea lines. And that will be up soon, but it'll be this time next week, 5 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Central. And until then, start to look at your participation. Start to see, where are you unwilling and where are you not willing? Where is curiosity there versus, oh, sheesh, not this again? Start to challenge yourself and live fully and freely and see what little curiosity, a little willingness brings to the equation for you. Okay? Until next week.
Bye-bye.